The South African Human Rights Commission says mine owners or former mine owners also should take blame for not rehabilitating and securing access to the mining tunnels, the dumps and surrounding environment. The Commission says it has found that there are limited initiatives in place to deal with the challenges related to unregulated artisanal mining in South Africa. For more on this, we are joined by the Acting Chief Operations Officer at the South African Human Rights Commission, Eric Mokonyama. Mr. Mokonyama, thank you very much for your time. You did conduct investigations relating to this back in 2015. I'm not going to ask you to revisit the highlights, but safe to say that residents have always complained over their safety and crimes associated with illegal mining. Based on that investigation you conducted and the recommendations you made to government, what have you observed to have been implemented?
Good morning, Tori, and good morning to your viewers. Unfortunately, not much out of those recommendations have been or has been done in terms of implementation. And as the South African Human Rights Commission, we are deeply concerned because it is precisely the result of non-action on the part of government that we end up with the kind of situation we have recently seen in and around Krugersdorp and the victimization of women in a very horrendous manner. So we are looking into engaging government to make sure that we are able to put strict time frames around implementation of those recommendations so that what has just happened can be averted going forward.
Mr. Mokonyama, the issue of illegal mining, or what some people call artisanal mining, are you able to tell us the difference? Because I asked the Minister of the Mines yesterday, Gwede Mantashe, what artisanal mining is versus what is going on. And he said artisanal mining is artisanal mining, but illegal mining, which is what has been going on in Krugersdorp, is exactly that, and that should never be legitimized. The major difference, in your view, between these two activities?
Firstly, artisanal mining is recognized as one of the trades which are conducted in South Africa across a number of spectrum in mining and in many other sectors. The point of the matter is that in terms of the mining sector, it needs to be regulated and legalized. So what we find ourselves in South Africa is that companies are given licenses to conduct mining operations. And when they are done with their operations, they do not comply with some of the conditions of those licenses in terms of making sure that their mining operations are properly closed up. As a result, that creates a space for people, because of many different social challenges, to go onto that or into those kind of spaces to now start mining whatever is left of, unfortunately, illegally and in an unregulated manner. That's risking their lives and now creating a platform for more criminality to take place, like the rapes which we have observed in and around Krugersdorp.
Yeah. Have you been able to go back to government after your report that was released in 2015, in particular the recommendations? Have you gone back to the Ministry of Mineral Resources to say this is what we think you should do, because based on what you have been saying here in relation to that very report of 2015 is that the industry remains largely informal and therefore unlawful, despite an increase in the number of Section 27 mining permits that have been issued by government. In plain language, what are you complaining about there?
We are saying, Oli, that firstly, we have shared the hearing report with government, of course, outlining the findings and the recommendations. And what we are saying is that the reason we have so much illegal mining happening is because of lack of regulation on the part of government. And we are saying that as a result thereof, that creates or opens up a huge platform for criminality on a number of aspects, in terms of the fact that the companies themselves who get so much benefit out of the mining business do not comply with the conditions of their licenses. But beyond that, that also then creates space for people or ordinary members of society to come on and then conduct illegal mining. And that creates a lot of other problems like the crime we've just seen happening now as we observe across the West Rand and in other parts of the country. There is potential for people taking law into their own hands and then exacerbating the levels of criminality in the country. Not long ago, the police ministry issued statistics on crime in the country, and they are very shocking. And with this kind of situations, we are likely to see the crime levels increasing, and with people more taking law into their hands.
There's a particular proposal around the policing of this. I'm going to talk to you about that in a moment, which was made by the Minister of Mineral Resources yesterday. But before we get there, you have pointed the finger directly at the companies, and you're saying that they should take some responsibility as well for rehabilitating the space where they would have been operating, and in particular securing those mines once they are done with their mining activity, which is what is not done. But the Minerals Council of South Africa, formerly Chamber of Mines, will tell you that our members pay monies towards the rehabilitation funds, which funds are administered by the Ministry of Mineral Resources. Therefore, we simply are not going to take part even in the conversation about how to rehabilitate or close these mines, because that's the domain of Mineral Resources. What will your response be?
That's shocking, especially when we look at the issue of safety and accountability. At the end of the day, our communities become victims of all this to and fro and pointing of fingers between the mining companies and the ministry. And I think one of the ideas or the steps we're going to take as the Commission is to engage both parties so that we can find some common ground around how these rehabilitation plans should be implemented, as well as the time frames, because you can't have situations where mines have ended a business months, if not years ago, and their operating areas are still open, and that risking our people's lives and creating a platform for more criminality. So that's something we're going to be looking into in terms of our engagement going forward, because it can be that government points to the mining companies and the mining companies points back to government. Someone must be held accountable.
Yeah, and it brings me to my next question. The Minister of Mineral Resources talking to us yesterday saying that he has been in conversation with his police counterpart, Begicele, to say a special policing unit to deal with illegal mining needs to be created or established. Do you think that is the solution?
That could be part of the solution, Toli. One thing which is very critical in this space is that there needs to be proper regulation firstly, and there needs to be preventative mechanisms. We cannot afford a situation where what has happened happens first, and then we act only after the fact, because with a lack of proactive and preventative interventions, we're likely going to see a situation where in no time the current mood calms down, and we kind of sit on our laurels for some time. In a year or so, something else happens, and it's only then that we start waking up. We need to be proactive, we need to be preventative, and we need to be very consistent in our interventions going forward.
Yeah. Final question to you, sir. The description around what has occurred, because what triggered all of this was the savage rape of 8 young women, allegedly at the hands of the so-called illegal miners, and which is why law enforcement is conducting this operation of rounding up the so-called undocumented people who are specifically doing this illegal mining. You have already expressed concern that people are going to start taking the law into their own hands, and I will argue and say, well, that has already happened. Yesterday, a life was lost. And so, is it the South African human rights' view that this issue of illegal mining in South Africa, which has effectively become an industry of its own, albeit illegal, it's a ticking time bomb?
It's an old problem, Toli. It's an old ticking bomb. The taking into of the law into people's hands has been continuing, and it is overdue that government and all stakeholders in the mining sector puts their heads together urgently to come up with a package which would ensure that this criminality in the mining sector is prevented, and that there are consistent and effective means put in place to ensure that what has happened does not recur.
Acting Chief Operations Officer at the South African Human Rights Commission, Eric Mokonyama, thank you very much for your time.